We are so honored that you're here with us for Season 3.
We want to share, connect, and grow the paper flower community with you. Welcome to Paper Talk. Thank you for listening to this episode of Paper Talk. Today's episode is sponsored by patron Heather Carney. We appreciate your donation, and we're excited to keep creating content for the paper flower community. If you're interested in supporting us, head on over to Patreon page at www.patreon.com/papertalk and sign up as a patron. We would love to see you there.
Welcome to another episode of Paper Talk. Today we have Martha Lucia Tokos with us, and she is known as Lucy under her business name Pretty Petals by Lucy. And you probably have seen her beautiful cardstock flowers on Instagram and on the web. They're everywhere, and we were just super amazed at what she could do with a flat piece of cardstock paper. So we had to have her on Paper Talk. Welcome, Martha.
Welcome, Martha.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me over. This is a dream come true for me. I've been following you and I've listened many of your shows and I've learned a lot from it. So thank you again for having me over.
Oh, we're so excited to have you here with us. I love your flowers. It's just amazing that what you can do with cardstock is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and you have a certain style and aesthetic that's very recognizable as well. So when I was doing my own little research on you, I just thought, you know what, this this artist must come from a certain background where she already knows her style, where she's already kind of has an idea of what she likes and what she doesn't. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with paper flowers.
Well, goodness, I've always been attracted to paper crafts. Before my son was born, he's going to be 21 in May. I actually did a lot of scrapbooking. I did stamping, card making, calligraphy. So as you guys can see, I was drawn into paper arts in one way or other. But I did that for a couple of years. Scrapbooking specifically, I did a lot of scrapbooking back in the day when people actually used to scrapbook their prints, their photographs. Times have changed, so I don't think many people do that anymore, but that's how I started my journey. Then life got in the way and I went on to pursue my professional career. I finished my college degree. That was my main focus for a while. So I took a little bit of a sabbatical from paper arts and crafts until my oldest son, went away to college, and that really hit me hard. And I would say that I was even depressed. And one way to cope with it was going back to what made me feel happy and comfortable. And I started to pursue a little bit hand lettering and calligraphy until I come across paper flowers. So I remember, I think I Googled how to make a paper flower, and I came across one class in particular, and I did a giant paper flower. It took me a while to do it, and I had many burns in my fingers because I didn't really understand the technique. But
hot glue is dangerous.
But then hearing the feedback from my family and friends, they're like, oh, this is gorgeous and you should do it. So long story short, from that, I started to actually do things for friends and family. I started doing the gigantic paper flowers, which from my perspective, like there's a lot of people that do that and probably they do a better job than I do. But that's how I started my paper flower journey. So I started with the giant paper flowers, but then when I discovered kind of like the smaller, more realistic paper flowers, that's when I kind of like, okay, I think I found my niche and that's really what I want to do. I don't want to do the gigantic paper flowers, but I want to do more kind of like the cardstock paper flowers. And that's how I started my journey.
That's awesome. So where would you say most of your clients, what kind of flowers do they order for their event? Is it weddings, special events?
I haven't had that many for weddings. I think it's more for special events and gifts. Definitely for Mother's Day, for Christmas, for engagements, that type of thing. So it's more for gifting than for like special events.
I love that. How do you go about advertising it? Because it's such a unique little niche that you've developed, because your story is a little bit different, because everyone that we've heard in the past always says, oh, it's weddings. But you're saying it's not weddings. I love that.
It's not weddings. And at the beginning of my journey, I actually, and I think you guys have addressed this before, education, it has to be a continuous loop because it helps you to get better and more comfortable at what you do. So when I found my little niche, kind of like the small paper flowers, I actually, again, Google, kind of like paper flowers. So through my searches, I think the first thing that came was Sarah Kim. And I actually took my first paper flower workshop. I took it from Kim. So here you had someone from Las Vegas driving down to California and just to go call and get a live workshop by Thera. So from that point, I started to get more interested and like, okay, how am I going to advertise myself? Definitely, I feel that for the market here where I am here in Las Vegas, is not too common or popular as if you would have paper flowers, let's say in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And I definitely have found even like sometimes the hard way that probably, especially for my market here in Las Vegas, for local market, is more getting out there, get my name out there. Mm-hmm. And doing that, I haven't done much, let's say marketing, but it's more kind of like on presence, live presence, either on like local craft markets, or we had a couple of events here that Queen Bee is probably one of those where you have like a 3-day event. It's 3-day event where you have local crafters and makers and you have a booth, you set it up and people come excited and they shop pretty much all day. And throughout the course of the market, they also had live workshops where people came and did that. So I found that to be my niche. And that was one of my first markets that I did. So for me, that was my launching and my, getting out to the community and teaching people that this is a paper flower and this is another alternative from just a regular flower. It will last longer and, you can customize, you can have flowers pretty much all year round. So that was me just trying to educate my local community, but also trying to get my name out there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it's so interesting that at different locations, depending on where you are, the market's just different in terms of how to reach your ideal customers, whether it's in person or it's, sometimes in some cities in person, just there's so many fairs and so many artists that the local scene might not be the right one. So you finding that kind of that niche and knowing pretty much your city and your community, that's so important. Do you, like in terms of your market, I mean, you talked about where and who, but do you ever tap into your Ecuadorian community at all?
No, not really. I mean, maybe the Hispanic Latinx community, yes. So I do have a lot of followers, but what I found out that more from my community, they're more hands-on. So the people who reach out to me, let's say on Instagram, they want to learn. So they have asked me, are you going to do a workshop? Are you going to offer, Spanish workshop? Because they want to learn. Whereas maybe other people, they don't want to they know probably that is a lot of work and they just want to buy it already made. But based from that feedback, after I did my first couple of craft shows, I actually started to do classes. So I had a couple of places here local that they reached out to me and they asked me, would you be interested on showing or teaching a workshop? And, I said yes, without even like knowing too sure on how to do it. But I'm like, yeah, I can do it because I've taught classes before. When I was doing scrapbooking and stamping, I actually used to have classes at Michael's. So I was one of the instructors way back then. So comfortable teaching and I'm comfortable speaking in front of people. So when they reached out to me, I said, yes, definitely I can do that. So that's another area besides just having the local markets that I've marketed myself to do workshops, teaching the different classes with templates, without templates. So I've been able to do that.
And how much of your business do you think is, or would you say is the teaching versus the selling?
And I know the answer for this because I did my taxes. So
tax time.
A good way to reflect on the year from before.
Yes. 2020 wasn't a good year.
Yeah.
And that's why I was able to, kind of like see what I did on 2019. So 2019, definitely most of my income came from workshop. So that was definitely the more profitable part of my business because I did, and I taught many workshops on 2019. 2020, what saved me on 2020 was actually when things were starting to pick up a little bit and open up slowly. Pinners Conference in Arizona, that was probably one of the biggest ones that I taught last year.
That's wonderful. So what flower did you end up teaching at that conference?
So for Pinners Conference, we have a collaboration, or I have a collaboration with Farron Celeste. And I can talk more about it.
Yes.
So from 2020, everyone was at home and people became really crafty. 2020, you can go to Michael's or Target and find things to craft. So I reached out to Farron probably in the middle of pandemic when everyone was crafting at home. And I brought up the idea to her if maybe we could collaborate and maybe I could either teach with her templates, but also make flower kits ready, all cut, ready for people to do it at home. So from that idea, we actually formed petal packets, which basically is everything already pre-made, pre-packaged. You just have to put them together. So for Pinners Conference, it was the launching for us for petal packets. And I taught the dahlia and the anemone from Farron's templates. I taught during a live audience or a live workshop, I should say.
That's wonderful. We love Farron.
Yeah.
She's still in Denmark, isn't she?
She is. And that's the only reason why, yes, she's in Netherlands. I mentioned Farron because I came across Farron at the beginning of my journey. So after I took my class with Sarah Kim, I started to look more into, follow Instagram pages. And I came across Farron because she had a Juliet Rose template. And that was before she was even like selling them to the public. And I think that was at the same time that she had moved to Netherlands. So when I reached out to her, I said, I love your Juliet Rose. Mm-hmm. Do you sell the template? So she sold me the template. There were not instructions, anything like that. So I started to send her pictures of my process. Like, is this okay? And from that point, our relationship has grown to now being kind of like business partners.
Hey, I'm so happy to hear that.
Awesome. No, I
love
awesome.
the name. I love the name Petal Packets. It's so clever.
Yes. And everything comes in a packet, all petals. They're beautiful cut. And it's her famous, or I would say the top seller templates that she has is what we have for Petal Packet.
So how does this collaboration work? She has her templates. And then in the States, do you then package the kits for your students?
Yes. So we cut them and we put everything together, the wire, the floral tape, the little craft paper that you do to put the paper cone together. So we package everything very beautifully, very on brand, and we send that to the people who buy the petal packets on our Etsy store. Along with that, they also receive a link so that they can see Farron's tutorials, the same tutorials that she has available when people buy her templates online. They also get to see the tutorials so that they can put those things together at home. On the live workshops that I've done with Farron in collaboration with her, pretty much have the rights, if you will, so that I can use her templates and do the live teaching. So that is great trust and collaboration because she has trusted me to actually teach her process on how to put her flowers together.
Yeah. And to say that, yes, that does require a lot of trust. As artists, sometimes we can be so protective of our creations and our ideas and our templates. I mean, she must trust you a lot. You guys must have a wonderful working relationship. That's what I would say. For you to, teach her templates, but also, I mean, you're also doing a lot of promotion for her too on this side of the ocean, and actually showing up and teaching people live how to execute her flowers. It is a partnership. You don't have to answer, but I just have to ask, do you guys have, is it like a mutual understanding, or do you guys have things put into an agreement or a contract?
Yeah, we have an agreement. And I think that I have to give it to Farron. She's when we started to talk about it, from my perspective, I brought the idea to her. It's like, okay, we're going to get it done. But it actually took us a little bit to get started just because she wanted to have a contract in place.
Of course.
So, and I understand that because, at some point she's going to move back here to the United States. So I won't be able to do that. But until we can do that, we have the collaboration. And for me, it's more kind of like, from my perspective, it's more teaching and sharing what we have, and Farron trusting me with that process. That's her material and her work that she has put on making these beautiful templates. The other thing too is that Farron and I, we have an agreement that as much as I try to follow her step for making her flowers, sometimes I put my own spin because that's me. That's my brand.
Sure.
Yeah.
So even though I might be using her templates, and her peony might look different than my peony, even when I use her own templates. So there's always like a different spin on that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Teaching people how to use a template, but putting their personality into the results. I think that is like, this is me, even though I use something.
Yeah.
It's like learning from books and from learning from other online courses is they give you the templates, but how do you turn it into your own personality into the flower?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, and I follow many of your tutorials as well. So even though I follow, I'm always going to put my own brand and my own personal touch much because I'm doing them. So even though I follow the same steps, the end result might look different than yours.
Yes, I love that. Yay.
I know that you sell most of, or if not all of your paper flower products on Etsy. How has that experience been?
Etsy has been challenging, to be honest with you. I would say most of my sales actually come directly from Instagram. So part of my business here, I started with paper flowers. But for me, part of to become, just what's the word, present in the local markets, I had to incorporate my flowers into something. And that's one of the lessons I learned from attending one of these local markets was that people didn't want to buy just like a paper flower or even single pick to put them together in a bouquet. They wanted to see more the paper flower into, let's say, a sign. And that's how I started kind of like the wood creations part of my business because it allows me to actually put my work, my paper flowers into, let's say, a wreath or a sign or something like that. So just going back to my Etsy saga, I guess, is that I've had it for a while, and I don't know if it's a game of just kind of like the words or what it is, but most of my sales actually have been directly from Instagram. I started to see actually picking up my Etsy sales when I started to put some of my wood creations in Etsy, which is also allowing me to give more exposure to my paper flowers. And that's how I've gotten some orders from Etsy for paper flowers. But that's kind of like just the feedback that I wanted to share. Most of my sales have been local here in the market, but also directly sales from Instagram.
Have you looked at your numbers for Etsy? Because one of the things that we keep hearing is all the fees. And if you get a certain amount, then they really ding you on the advertising fees. How do you feel about that? And do you plan to continue working with Etsy?
Yes, because like in 2020, I actually went and I created my own website because I didn't see, sales coming from Etsy. But I went through all that work and I had like a link where people could go and buy the flowers from there. Still, I didn't see any orders coming from my own personal website. So I think I got more exposure from Etsy, not great numbers or anything like that. But Etsy for me was a platform that it was more secured for me to expose my art. The other things that I looked on Etsy is that most of my views from Etsy come directly from my Instagram account or Pinterest. So I had a couple of things that I had a Pinterest board and people would click on my Etsy, whether they bought something or not, but at least you got some additional, views, I guess, from those different sources.
Interesting. So essentially your other social media platforms were funneling people to your Etsy site, and you're still on Etsy though.
I'm still on Etsy.
Despite the challenges.
Despite the challenges, I'm still on Etsy.
How do you arrange for sales for your workshops then if you don't have a website?
Yeah, that's a great question because I have a couple of places here in town that they're storefronts and they sell home decor, but they have, let's say once a month or something like that, they have workshops on the weekends and things like that. So that's how I kind of like started my workshops here in town. Other thing is, I think it's, I can't remember the name, is Craft and Wine or something like that, where they have, you come and you craft, but you can also, purchase drinks. So that was the first one that actually reached out to me if I was interested on teaching a class because she saw my paper flowers on one of those local markets. And that was the first workshop that I did, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And I think the first time talk about preparing, I said, yeah, I can do about 10 people. So she turned on the registration on her site, and the day of, I think she sends me a message and she says, we have I think it was close to 25 people that have signed up for the class, but I wasn't ready for it.
All the materials, you're probably scrambling to get them.
And it was difficult because the venue is beautiful, but it was this long table and I had to kind of figure out, having stations for the glue guns, but also having to split my time going back and forth so I could, pretty much help everyone. But that was my first one. And from that point, I'm like, okay, I got it. So, and that I started to offer that more also private workshops too. That's what kept me a little bit busy last year. I had a couple of people that they would get together because everything was pretty much closed. So when it was safe, so with mask and everything, I would go and teach some of the classes to this group of crafty friends that got together to do that.
What do you think is the most challenging when you're teaching specifically cardstock paper flowers?
Well, the challenging part is probably the cutting piece. I'm a visual person, so I need to see it so that I can cut my flowers or cut my petals to what I want. So trying to teach that, because I'm like, you can go and instruct people, this is how you cut it, but people probably the same as me, they want to see you in action. So for me, is actually taking some of those like pieces of paper and going from table to table, or making sure that people understood what I was trying to say so that they can get that. Whereas if the last workshop that I did was with Ference templates, which is much easier because everything already comes cut for you. So the instruction was a little bit different because I didn't have to tell you how to shape the rose petal or a peony petal. Everything pretty much was already done. So I guess that's the difference.
Out of curiosity, do you, with the kits where most of everything's been cut, most of it is pretty much just assembly, do you charge more or less than in a workshop where literally you do everything from scratch? Nothing's pre-cut, so there's no time that's been invested by you or Farron in the kit.
To be honest with you, the cost is about the same because we use the same amount of paper, and the cost of me cutting everything to size so that if teaching you how to hand cut everything, I still have to do some prepping beforehand. Whereas with Farron, we have the machine doing the cutting. The only thing probably are cost, which to answer your question, the pre-made packets, actually the workshop is a little bit more expensive than my hand cut workshops. So I think probably the difference is about, it depends too, it's about $15 to $20 difference. The other thing too that I have to take in consideration is that a lot of these places that invite me to teach, they keep a portion of that. So when I charge my class, I have to keep that in mind that, let's say if I'm charging, I don't know, $40 for the class, maybe the place where I'm teaching, they're taking a fee, and their fee can be $5. It can be up to $10. So that's
per
why.
Per person, you mean, right?
Per person. Yeah. Because they help you also do some of marketing
promotion.
Exactly. And that's how some of my local classes here, it helped me because, one of them, they had a marketing list, and they also had a very loyal customer base. So she would send an email with the workshop announcement, and that's how people got to know me as well.
That's a great way. I mean, I've been partnering with the Paper Place since pretty much the beginning as well. And at the first, it was just, being so flattered to be asked, like, oh, somebody actually likes my work and they want me to teach a workshop. But as I grew as in my paper flower business, I realized how important that relationship is, not just because they're my source for paper flowers, but also just having a great relationship with a local retail store that kind of has the same customer base as you do, and that their reach is going to be probably a lot wider and a little bit different, slightly different, but there's overlap, and you never know who's in that customer base that might suddenly be interested in your work. So finding those local stores, or I guess it doesn't have to be local, but stores that have the same customer base as you that can kind of help you up a little bit at the beginning. Yeah, it's really, really helpful.
Yeah. And it was interesting because, so based on my experience on 2019, I said, okay, able to teach workshops and I'm getting enough attention and people are interested. So I said, okay, so I'm going to go and venture a little bit on the side. And I actually applied to teach classes at my local Michael's. So submitted an application, my class was accepted. And then for the registration, I had 2 dates that I had selected. I had to cancel one of them because I had no people that registered to the class. And then for one of them, I had only 2. So even though I got to keep more money for me, it also goes into the exposure. Michael's doesn't send a list to all their customers. So for me, I understood the relationship of actually going through a local source than probably a big chain like either a Michael's or Joanne. So from that point, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stay with the local store.
Gosh, it's been so amazing talking to you, Martha. We learned so much about so many different things. But moving on to a really fun thing is when you make all these paper flowers, what do you drink? And do you watch anything or listen to anything?
So if I make paper flowers on a weekday, probably just water or coffee. That's my drink. But if it's on the weekend and it's late at night, probably a margarita. I'm a tequila girl. So I love that. So margarita. And as far as watching, I've heard other people and they're so inspirational because they watch all this wonderful, like I watch, I don't know, Hamilton or something like that. I prefer my trash TV when I craft. So I'm into the 90 Day Fiancé and the Real Housewives of New Jersey. So yes,
it's
so
entertaining.
It's entertaining. It's mindless. You don't have to follow too closely.
Yeah, that's my dose of reality. I'm like, okay, so that's my time.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you're looking for a way to support us, please hit subscribe and write us a review. We would appreciate it so much.
You can also support us as a patron on patreon.com. Your contribution would help us continue to create great content for you and the Paper Flower community.